As most of you have probably gleaned, I am a huge Resident Evil fan, and that makes what I'm about to say all the more heartbreaking. There are some tyrant-sized stains on this otherwise immaculate dynasty. I'm sure you're all familiar with the mammoth disappointments that were RE5, 6, and Survivor, but there's a game that towers over the rest, a game that stinks worse than any rotting corpse, and today I have the displeasure of reviewing it. What's up guys, I'm Jared, and this is Avalanche Reviews. In Resident Evil Dead Aim, you play as Bruce, an agent of a government task force put together specifically to handle the Umbrella Corporation. The game starts out on a luxury ocean liner owned by Umbrella, with Bruce in pursuit of Morpheus, an ex-Umbrella employee who's threatening to launch missiles containing stolen samples of the T-virus at the US and China. And of course, most of this isn't made clear in the beginning, which is okay, but the fact that Bruce works for an anti-Umbrella agency isn't revealed until 2/3 into the game. Now, I'm not going to knock a game for holding its cards close till the end, but I at least want to know some of the essential elements of the plot. Keeping facts like this about the main character hidden for such a long time and for no good reason gives me the impression that this game was written by someone who's never played an RE game and is trying to emulate a style he's only heard about secondhand. And speaking of secondhand, this is Ada Wong. I mean Fong Ling, a Chinese agent working for the Chinese equivalent of Bruce's agency. I guess. This part of the story was also left up to my imagination. And that's sort of all there is to it. Other than the fact that the two are after the same villain and he has the T-virus, there's little to the game's story. For the most part, your objective is just background dressing, little more than a carrot on a string leading you through vaguely familiar sets of locations. As I sat down and tried to put my thoughts about this story into words, I realized that it's just checking off some kind of weird Resident Evil 2 trope list. There's your main character belonging to some kind of law enforcement agency, your Chinese, sometimes playable side character, an Umbrella employee who's just injected himself with his own virus, becoming a hulking tyrant, the game ending in an Umbrella facility that's been overrun with the Walking Dead, and even the culmination in the detonation of that same Umbrella facility. I know many seem to think Resident Evil Survivor is the worst game in the series, but I can assure you its story is poetry when compared to Dead Aim. While I myself yearn for the Resident Evil series to return to its roots, I also recognize that you can't keep revisiting the same exact premise. Zelda fans. There has to be some kind of progress made, and if that's what you're looking for, I recommend you look elsewhere. Like some kind of bastard child of both the core RE series and the more arcadey Gun Survivor line of games, Dead Aim plays out in a traditional third-person camera and switches to first-person when you aim your gun. The third-person controls opt for a more 3D style to go with the 3D backgrounds, and while you would assume that foregoing the traditional tank controls would lead to easier maneuvering, that is simply not the case. It seems the developers kept the turn speed found in earlier RE games, so you'll be trucking along at a pretty brisk pace, but you're going to have to start turning well before any obstacles appear, as it takes forever to get your character to change direction. And of course, that's only half the story, so you'll be happy to hear that the first-person controls are an entirely different mess altogether. Hitting R1 puts you in first-person mode, and this is the only way you can fire a weapon, so you're going to be doing this a lot. You can move your targeting reticle with the right analog stick, and you're able to walk while firing if you're holding one of the L triggers. The difficulty comes in when trying to fire with any degree of accuracy, though. The control with the right analog stick is way too sensitive, and I found an easier time just holding down the L trigger, strafing left and right in order to line up shots, as this analog stick is way more forgiving. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I did suspect this may be due to my controller, so I borrowed another controller and got the same results. Solving the problem I felt single-handedly brought down the first Survivor game, Dead Aim has a white icon that flashes when an enemy is beside you or behind you, an idea that would be worthy of praise if it managed to work. More than half of the time, I would get out of first-person mode to avoid what the game considered to be an imminent threat, only to find a single zombie all the way down the end of an adjacent hallway. Outside of the controls, there isn't much to be found here. Dead Aim tries to be a by-the-numbers Resident Evil game, which means you'll be exploring creepy environments, looking for keys and other MacGuffins that will let you progress on to the next area, which are some of my favorite elements in the Resident Evil games. But what I found at Dead Aim was a heartless, shallow dime store attempt at a formula that requires much more love and finesse to pull off. On the upside, a general lack of extensive backtracking means you're almost always making forward progress, which leads to a pretty short playtime. Newcomers to the game can expect to see the end in about 3 or 4 hours. Typically, a short playtime isn't exactly what I look for in my games, but with Resident Evil Dead Aim, I guarantee you'll appreciate having to spend as little time with it as possible.
Morpheus?
You know, I spend a lot of time on this show defending games that objectively aren't graphically impressive, but this is something entirely different. Bruce's character model just looks oddly proportioned, kind of like the person who modeled him wasn't really sure what human adults are supposed to look like. And sadly, proportions aren't the only problems. The overall look of the game lacks polish, and it all kind of reminds me of those Sega Ages 2500 series of budget-priced PS2 games. Textures are blurry, low-res affairs, and everything is modeled with very simple geometry. But there are some redeeming features here, mostly in the form of the game's zombies. Your dead adversaries all look really cool and interact with the environment in realistic ways. Sometimes you'll get a headshot on one of these shambling corpses and their bodies will fly back and slide down the nearest wall, leaving a bloody trail behind it. Ah, visceral gore, just like Mom used to make. This upside, however, does not include the rest of the BOWs you'll encounter in your trek. Monster design in Dead Aim is severely lacking. For example, this is how you fuck up the terrifying design of the lizard-like hunters. Make them look like frogs with Down syndrome. But all this aside, I have to admit there were portions of Dead Aim that against all odds managed to project an honest-to-goodness dark atmosphere, especially the ship's interior. While Revelations this is not, Dead Aim still has a pretty creepy vibe that manages to squeeze through a lot of the problems. At least it would if I could see it. I had to jack the brightness up on my TV to even get the slightest grasp of what's going on here, and when I did that, I found the dark shadows still remained, meaning that this limited field of view was included on purpose. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for keeping a game relatively dark to increase the mood, but I could hardly see anything in this sewer section. And to make things worse, your Chinese better half decided to leave her flashlight at home. So the parts of the game spent playing as her are frustrating as all hell as you desperately try to navigate your way through a succession of pitch black rooms filled to the brim with bloodthirsty zombies. And don't you dare insist that this was due to some hardware limitation. If the PS2 can render miles and miles of Vice City, it can show me a couple of inches in a simple hallway. All in all, Dead Aim is a massive disappointment in the graphics department. While there are some scattered moments of immersive creepiness, they still can't make up for this dark, ugly experience. Okay, so not exactly a hidden gem we're dealing with here, but in the honor of fairness, let's take a look at the game's pros and the almost infinite list of its cons. Sometimes, almost in spite of itself, the game achieves a pretty creepy atmosphere. Fans of Jill's sandwiches rejoice. Dead Aim brings back the series staple, gag-inducing voice acting. Man, I am really searching for upsides with this game. But the intro song is a pretty cool progressive rock track with some polyrhythmic drumming, so there's that. The game's controls were stiff and really awkward. An overly sensitive right analog stick leaves accurate shooting more up to luck than player skill. Dead Aim takes place in some of the least lit environments I've ever played through. Prepare to have to change brightness settings on your TV. For almost a year, it looked like this was going to be the only original Resident Evil game on Sony's money-printing powerhouse. Thank the gods for the Outbreak games. Well, I think you guys get the idea. I can't really recommend this game to anyone, even you hardcore Resident Evil fans, which sucks because I can remember having a decent time with it when it first launched. I guess my fanboy glasses were fogged with nostalgia for the series. With shit controls, a botched attempt at cloning its source material, and crappy low-end graphics for the time, Resident Evil Dead Aim is one corpse that should never be reanimated. And that's all I have for now, but I will be back soon, so as always, I'm Jared. and this has been Avalanche Reviews. Alright guys, thanks for checking out another episode of Avalanche Reviews. If you like what you saw, you can click that subscribe button right there, or hell, even if you didn't like what you saw, you could do it sarcastically, I'll never know. But anyways, if you get into the Resident Evil series, I have a little opinion piece here on the top 4 features that need to return to it. You can check that out here on the right. And then on the left, I have my review of E7 for the PSP. Now, the one thing I'm really interested to know is if any of you guys actually like Dead Aim. So let me know in the comments if you ever even played this piece of crap, let alone liked it. And I think that's about it for me, but I'll see you guys later.